Welcome to my channel. My name is Charlie Lamp, and today we are going to be not giving guitar lessons, but we are going to be giving you a lesson on how to modify a Soldano Mini head. And the modification that we're going to be doing is one on the deep switch mode. Now the modifications consist really of two modifications that I had made. One being to convert this to the preamp frequency response of an original SLO. And the second mod is adding a potentiometer in the output stage, which happens to be the location of the deep switch. And this will allow you to get deeper tones in your playing. So what we have here is the master is set at about 1/2, the presence at 7, tone is about 5.5, middle is at about 3.5, bass is about 6, and the gain is set at 4, and we're going dry straight into the amp except through this noise gate. So let's go ahead and look at the mods. So what I do is I just put a piece of tape right onto the chassis there on that side, and then another piece of tape there. So when you slide it back in, you come up to that tape and you know where to stop. So now you could go ahead and start removing these feet. And you just pull the foot off like that, and that's what the screw looks like. It's very small, long but small. Then go ahead and proceed moving these screws. Then just pull this top back out, like so. Then from the front, give it a little push and this will slide out. Put this aside. And this is what you have. This particular switch I have in here is for the clean channel modification that we'll have in another video. And it just turns out that you don't even have to drill a hole for that switch. There's one there already for you. You just have to punch through the plastic. About a 32nd of an inch plastic facing here that you have to drill a hole through. And what's really nice about this circuit is that most of the components are traditional components. They're not surface mounted. This is the Class D amplifier here. They are surface mounted. And just a little sneak peek, this is the clean mod that I did. And we're basically just changing the gain of the op-amp amplifier and switching it in and out. The lamp depth mod that we're putting in here, we'll call it depth, well, we'll call it mod 1. And mod 1 is with that switch that I just showed you. And that switch is going to go across what's called C8. And that's the C8. What I showed you was actually putting the wires across R10 and R11 actually. If we come over here, and thanks for the courtesy of ampbooks.com to put the SLO online, that we have the preamp stage here. And if you follow the schematic from the output of the first tube, and here's the output of our first op amp over here, it goes into the 0.02 microfarad capacitor. There's no R10 over here, which would go to ground. But that's such a high value, it's not going to really do anything, so we're just going to leave that in there. But notice there's no series capacitor C8 over here. It goes straight into the gain control of the SLO circuit. But first it goes into that 470 with a parallel resistor, and then it goes into the gain control. Those are all in the circuit. So by eliminating that capacitor, we're going to be allowing lower frequencies to enter into the circuit, into the next stage. And they don't, like I said, they don't have that cap on the SLO. So I decided to make it look more like the SLO and to short that cap out, but put it on a switch. So just in case you like it to be more tighter, because that's what it does. It tightens up the signal, allows less loads to pass through because it is a smaller cap. Just ignore those 0.1 microfarads that I put there. That was another experiment that I had done. But all we do is put a switch across this cap here. Let's proceed with mod number 1. Mod number 1 is very easy. It's basically putting a jumper across 2 points, or putting a switch which goes to the back from, with the same two points on the board. And those 2 points are here and right here. Let's zoom in. Right here we see the top of R11 and the left side of R10. And so you just put a jumper across those 2 points, like I said, or hook up 2 wires, and then we'll go to the back panel to a switch. And that switches in mod number 1, which eliminates the capacitor, the extra capacitor they put in there, and then it conforms to the original SLO amplifier preamplifier output stage. And that's it. And then turning this around, this is where we put the switch. Let's flip it around. It looks right side up. So there it is. So in the up position, it shorts the cap out, and the down position brings it back to the stock SLO Mini. And this tone knob here is the modification mod 2, which we will show you shortly. One last time here in the back, that's where we put the switch. I did have to drill a hole there. And one word of caution, when you're drilling, I would remove this board to protect it before you start drilling in there. And make sure that you have some kind of wood stop behind there to catch the drill, so the drill doesn't get forced in, because you're going to be applying a lot of a pressure to that back panel with the drill. And as soon as it breaks through, Man, that drill just screams on through there. So that's this is the most dangerous part of this whole mod, is getting the holes put in there for the controls. Now earlier, I think I had mentioned or somewhere that there's a hole already back here. And there is a hole behind that knob there, but you have to drill out the plastic to expose that hole. And then I had to ream it out, or you could use a drill as well to get the right dimensions for the controls. And the control that I used is a 250 k ohm pot replacement for a Stratocaster. So I just picked up what I had a lot of laying around, and it turned out that it worked perfectly. So just a word of caution, be careful when you drill those holes. Mod number 2 is actually modifying the deep circuit of the SLO Mini, which is right, looking at this schematic, it's right on the output, and it goes right, the output of that amplifier goes to the master control. And what this is a low-pass filter on the feedback network, and a high-pass filter up here. And the only thing that we're going to do is, let me just zoom in. Is we're going to open up this side of R6 and insert a potentiometer in there. And what that does, it increases the gain of the low-pass filter when the depth switch is out. And it's kind of funny here that I noticed that when the depth switch is in, it lowers the gain, and they call that normal. When the switch is open, then it's in the deep mode. So this mod has to be used in the deep mode when that switch is open. Now, if you turn the pot all the way down to 0, so let's go to the modified version. Now we see the pot is inserted in series with R6, and when this wiper goes all the way to that end, it shorts out the 250K and you have your normal mode. So when you turn the pot down to 0, there'll be you're going to have like 0 ohms across here, and this guy will be out of the picture and you'll be back to normal. So the good thing about my mods are you can always revert back to its normal state, unmodified state. You could use it that way, sounds a little tighter. Or if you want to get a little bit more aggressive on the low end, then you just start turning this guy up. You make sure that is open. And just start increasing the resistance here, and the gain will go up. Now for mod 2, you have to remove these 4 screws. And you have to flip up the power amplifier module. That's the D-class amplifier. So let's go ahead and remove those screws. Now I just removed the screws, and this just basically flips out of the way. And the modification is right down in there. So mod 2, basically you're going to lift up one end. So you're going to put your soldering iron under there and carefully with a small screwdriver get it underneath there and lift up. And then there's the resistor right there that I did. and then I just put a little short piece of wire in there, and then I soldered it in, and then I soldered the control wire, one of the control wires to that point, heat shrink it, and then the other control wire to the other side of R6, which is the right side of R6, and then that goes to the control wire to the pot. Okay, so after that's done, you can put the 4 screws back in. Now, if you're going to be drilling after this step, I would just leave the deamplifier out of the way, because you're going to have to take that main module out. So it's safe, it's out of the way. Okay, so that's it for that, and we'll go into how to remove that module right now. Now the next step is to take the knobs off, and what I usually do, especially if these knobs have never been taken off, they could be a little tough, is wrap a piece of tape over a screwdriver and get that behind there and just wiggle it a little bit, and then you can pull it off. So we'll go ahead and take all those off. Now that you have the knobs off, just remove these nuts from the controls. It uses a 10mm socket. So go ahead and remove those. And also the input jack has a nut on it too. I believe that's 11mm. So you're going to have to remove that one too. Then remove the 4 screws from the deamplifier. Lift up the deamplifier, and there's 4 standoffs. They unscrew just like screws. You have to take those out. And then also in this corner here on the left side back, there's 1 screw you take out. Then you're going to lift up these connectors that are on the board. There's 2 of them back there. 1, 2. Those have to come up, and then the board will go backwards and then up and out. Okay, that's how that's done. Then you get the board out of the way. It's a lot safer for drilling your holes. Then you put the board back in, put the 2 connectors on, put the standoffs back in, the 4 standoffs, put the screws back onto the deamplifier board to hold that on, put the single screw back in, put all your nuts back in, including the input one, and then we're ready to button it up. So I wanted to share what just happened to me. I put the chassis back into its case and fired it up, plugged my guitar into it, and I couldn't get any sound going through it. So I go, okay, well, there's something wrong with it. So I opened it, had to open it back up again, and I found that the input into the Class D amplifier, the wires broke, and these wires are very fragile. So every time you flex this board, move it out of the way and put it back down, check those wires and make sure that they're still intact, because they're very thin. The other thing is make sure that all your 2 connectors are back on here, and that all the other connectors are also in place. Otherwise it won't work. So we're just going to solder that back on. And one other thing too is if you ever short out your speaker output somehow, you got a bad speaker cable, whatever, the amplifier will shut down. It has overload circuit protection built into the amplifier. And it's a wonderful thing because it protects itself. So to the guys that designed this amp, kudos to you guys. So all you have to do is turn the amp off, let it rest, maybe a minute or 2, and then you can turn it back on again. And that's it. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. So if you ever have any problem with your amp, they do recover. So the best way to strip these small wires is just do it with your soldering iron. So you just put a little there, then take your fingernail and then pull. If it doesn't happen the first time, just get it hot again. And there you go. It's exposed. Put your solder on there. That's all tinted. Do that to the other one too. You solder them up and you're good. And what that does, it keeps the integrity of the wiring. It's a stranded wire. It's very small. And they call that thermal stripping. They actually do make thermal strippers, but I don't have one. But we do what we can. So I put the chassis back in its case and I push it up to the edge of that tape. And that will pretty much be in alignment to put those feet back on. One more time.